Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Evolving Practice Podcast. I'm Dr. Bill Moss with my co-host.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sean Carey.
And welcome to the next episode. In this one, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're both chiropractors, spiritual guides, and healers. And a lot of times we talk a lot about people's personal healing journey and our own. We're also going to talk a little bit about the business of healing and doing healing work, but also from this perspective of building a business that's actually sustainable and why that's such an important foundation to work from. Because in the chiropractic profession, we both started as chiropractors. There's been many changes over the course of decades on how to build a business, how to run a business, how to take care of clients, and doing it in the most authentic means. And in healers, at least, I would say the chiropractic profession's a little bit further along the journey in being a business as opposed to just the healing arts. Within the energetic healing world, there's a lot of important reasons of why creating a good foundation and sustainability for long-term growth and care of people is so important. So we're going to explore all of those aspects in this episode today.
I love it. I think this is a conversation we're going to be really excited about, and we both have a lot to share here. And along the way, I remember being in chiropractic school. They told us basically that there's about a 50% attrition within the first 5 years, meaning that when you graduate, like for us, when I went to chiropractic school, the curriculum is so difficult that about a third of the people don't make it through. Of those that do graduate within 5 years, 50% will no longer be in practice. And it really comes largely from this piece. Because in order to actually make it into practice, like to graduate, you did have to have a certain level of clinical know-how and a certain amount of hands-on skills. And there was quite a lot that we were very well trained in. But I see it across the board with chiropractic and with the healing arts, where there's really amazing practitioners who just end up not in it for long term, because this piece of it, the business, is just not structured for long-term viability.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's one of the hardest things to do. And I think when you're starting out, it's hard to have kind of the long term in the forefront as to the steps are going to be, the strongest for 10 years down the road. And, I heard and saw people, I remember seeing some chiropractors who really switched this model when they first went into practice. And I'm just going to use some general examples where they went from this idea of like free to get everyone in and free exams and really low cost exams. And then, they always had this need for more and more and more new, right? Because they were kind of taking on a lot of maybe not good fits that still went through their process. And there is value in that. I'm not going to say there's not value, because there's value in getting your reps, right? Early in your first years, it's not only are you an infant as far as a business owner, you're also an infant as a practitioner in many ways. And no matter how much you've shadowed or how many offices you've seen or how many practicums you've done, you're still not fully, you don't have the learning and the foundation to understand all that's going to come at you. So part of the first couple of years, kind of learning how to care for people under the guise of you are running a business. And people may not say it, but nobody wants their doctor to be like struggling and not have their shit together. Like that's not good for anybody in entering a healing relationship if the practitioner is not actually taking care of themselves from an energy standpoint, physical standpoint, or even a financial standpoint.
Yeah, and it's it's a really, really big deal because this affects so many practitioners. In the medical world too, I believe the current when they do studies and basically ask different medical doctors of, would you go into the profession again? And they survey the amount that are basically close to burnout. It's like 80%-ish is close to burnt out. It's burnout. It's really, really wild, and they're having to do it on a different end than we are. But there is this big need in healthcare to make it sustainable for practitioners to do it long term.
Yeah. I think one of the things we've talked about in episodes, and that's, I want to say it's always in the back of my mind, is like, is my schedule the right schedule? Like, I'm not changing it all the time, but it's every month it's there being like, is this the best efficiency for me to take care of myself, my family, and my practice? Because when people see the traditional, I'm going to use traditional chiropractic hours of like open Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or
Yeah,
Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, I, the public kind of critique is, oh my gosh, you guys have great hours. And it's like there is a recovery with taking care of people that
yeah,
allows one to perform at their highest degree. And like you said with the medical doctor, I think there's more factors from an insurance perspective from or standpoint,
mm,
um, staffing, bureaucracy, depending on what model you're in. And I think that piece of the model of medical practice has drawn a lot more practitioners to go into this concierge. I determine my hours. I determine who I work with. I'm doing more cash based practice. I'm not promoting what I don't believe in. And I think that is part of that 80% burnout that you're describing. And
yeah.
we very much experience some of that. So, looking back in your career, let's kind of look at this is, what things did you do at the beginning personally that that did set you up for sustainability? Maybe you didn't know it at the time, but now looking back, you're like, oh, that was actually a good move that I made.
At the beginning, I don't know that there were a lot of really good moves made in that way for sustainability. I did not do it that way. Um, but maybe a couple years in, like there was 1 to 2 years in when I met some amazing mentors. The one thing I was doing really well is I was going out and going to these different chiropractic conferences. So I really wanted to be around like the best in the field and the people who were really passionate about it. They were successful. They were helping tons of people. They really knew chiropractic. They were masters of the craft, and they had been doing it for a long period of time. And what I noticed for a common trait for almost all of them was that they had 3-day weekends. And it was almost like they need that extra day to decompress from the week of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it took maybe a few years before I really switched to that. Uh, and by a few, probably like 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
When I actually did to change that schedule, that was huge for me, where it was like, okay, like I could actually do this long term.
Mm-hmm.
And those same mentors too, they encourage vacations. I'm not a huge vacationer. Most of the
Mm-hmm.
travel that I do is for learning and study, or teaching now. But the vacations, I saw that in my different mentors was how important it was for them to basically recharge. For exactly what you're saying, like you don't want a burnt out doctor.
Yeah. I even remember, so I opened my practice in November of 2014. And I remember in September of 2015, I had something every single weekend that month. I was like, I think one was educational. I believe one was for fun. And I just had something that wasn't, my practice building. And I remember I had my best month um,
Mm,
of in my early tenure, if you will, my first 9 months of practice or whatever that was in my practice. And I remember I had something similar happen again a couple months down the line. And I started to realize, like, these times that I really got away and got out of my head and away
yeah.
from the practice, I tended to have my best months, and they weren't the ones that I had the gas pedal down. And that's hard to kind of even, allow yourself to even accept that down the line. And I know I still struggle sometimes. Is like, but it tends to happen. I'm a camper, right? So I notice when my mind detaches from the practice a little, or gets out of the pattern of the week to week, I get really creative and kind of motivated and driven. So I would say also, I did set up my practice a little more with the schedule that you ended up going to in mind when I first opened. And I almost feel like I was better. I stuck better to that schedule then than I do almost now. And
Mm,
but I built my schedule around networking meetings that I was able to attend. So once I started the practice, I was going to all these ways of connecting in the community that I wanted to be able to keep doing once I opened my practice doors. So a little bit of my schedule was strategically built so I could continue to do those for an extended period of time. The other one was, like you said, if I'm traveling for conferences or whatnot. So I didn't have that Friday hours. So I basically worked Monday through Thursday, and I didn't see anyone on a Friday for like years. I
Mm.
just didn't have that. And now I do have some limited Friday hours because we've grown and I'm a single doc again. And I do some healing work. So like just the way I have my schedule built, it does lend that I have a few of those. But I remember hearing from a lot of my mentors, like, build around the things you need to do to
Yeah.
continue to grow, because there's always this piece of like where you're building and you're making complete new connections that have never heard of you. And then you
Yeah.
have this other tier of people that like have an awareness, you're starting to show up on their radar. And then you have people that are really close to making a decision to work with you. And then you have the people you're actually working with. So, and on all those levels, you need to be kind of engaging, if you will. Um, and I read Book Yourself Solid. I followed that program a little bit. You're very familiar with that training too.
Yeah.
And I think that helps kind of quantify those levels for people that I wish I would have known when I first was even building the idea of a business, because I would have known how to like placate and come into, build each one of those levels along the way before I even got started.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people going into to understand that piece of like being able to, being able to do it long term. I had a funny story this week that I haven't shared with you yet, but but it's good. It's so fitting for this conversation. Like a week ago, we just switched to a new chiropractic software. So we had this software like 13 years that has, many, many gigabytes, thousands and thousands of patient files. There's like 4 different softwares that are connected to this main software. And I got frustrated because for a variety of reasons, but we ended up switching it this past weekend. So that weekend, though, there was a problem with the data transfer. So I was in the office till 10:30 Thursday night. I was there at 6 a.m. to get the new company the data. Sunday night I was in there because they needed another like a file resent, and the whole weekend I was really kind of stressed about this big thing because we were transitioning to this new software, and from a business standpoint, we're going to have all these patients coming in on Monday. We still don't quite know how to use the new software, but we're going to be active with it, on Monday morning. So I was just very stressed. I was kind of strung out, and I had the week went by, and I'm doing a mentorship where I have a mentor that's helping me with the energy work, basically just giving guidance and support. Somebody who's been doing it for a really long time, Eric Thompson, who we actually did an interview with. So he's been helping me, and I sent him my weekly report last week. As like I had an off week. Things just I didn't really get a lot accomplished here. There was like a few things I got accomplished. And the first thing he writes back, he's like, do you have enough self-care? Are you getting enough rest? And it was so funny because like as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, like I was really burnt out last week. I was burnt out because it was that sprint for the software transfer. But I didn't even recognize it, in myself. Like I was toast at the end of the week, but I didn't realize how much it actually affected me. And so his advice for me was like, self-care, get some rest, relax a bit. And I didn't see it. I was so in that mode of stress, which is so easy to do with business because there's stuff happening all the time.
Yeah. And you can create it. You almost, I know I was a person that didn't want to slow down because I felt like I might lose that edge. There is value in stress. It helps heighten our focus. Sometimes we can get more out of ourselves than we believed we could, and those moments are helpful. But I know for myself, even when I first learned to meditate, I learned to meditate, like formal meditation, transcendental meditation, I think like 3 months after I started my practice. And I found very good benefits of it, especially starting a new business and purchasing a house and all these new life changes. But I remember the reason I didn't stick with it very consistently was because I wanted that anxiety. I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
was addicted, looking back, to this angst, this edge, this kind of like what you're describing, this energy I would create to kind of create a situation that made me have to step up to the plate,
Mm.
instead of just responding and then kind of getting back to balance. So it's funny that you say that, because I oftentimes, when I have a forced break, realize how much I've been running over the top. And I think that's a really good point. Like, you,
Yeah.
I remember somebody saying the first year, you need to be willing to go hard for, say, you're doing weekend events, right? You're doing different shows and events on the weekend. I remember the formula. It was like, I, somebody could do 5 and then they needed a break, right? Then you needed the weekend off, but kind of like setting your standard of what the pace is going to be, but always remembering that break. And I'm finding that now, like I'm trying to kind of, I have another child that was just born a couple weeks ago, and I had some downtime, which was fantastic. Things don't grow during that downtime, and a person that likes growth, that's
Yeah.
not always fun, and you have coverage and stuff. But I come out of this period of time and I'm like more motivated, I'm more creative, I have more reason to do well, and I have more energy to do it. But I'm also looking at my schedule again and saying, is this the best schedule for me right now to get the most out of myself and the
Yeah.
practice? And that's important. Your first year in business is different than your 10th year, but you still need to have that 10th year in mind, because, if you and I were both about, let's say, 5% better with our retention since
Right.
the inception, after 10 years, what a big difference that is in our practice.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of that too, the retention piece is like a lot of it can be because we're just maybe a little burnt out and not realizing it. It's
Yeah.
just like you're not 100% as present as you could be. You didn't respond to that something that a patient said that maybe deserved a different response. You just
Mm.
didn't quite hear it because you were stressed about something else.
Yeah.
That's really common. I remember one time we had there's a patient who left care, and it was this guy who was this wonderful guy. He didn't quite understand chiropractic, but he came in on a visit where earlier, maybe an hour before, my X-ray machine had broken, or went down. Right, like it didn't break, but it was functionally broken. So I was really stressed about the X-ray machine. I'm trying to get it up. I'm like on the phone with the tech people in between, and he had come in for like kind of an unscheduled visit, and he had a couple complaints. And then he had written later, he's like, I didn't feel like my complaints were fully addressed or heard. And to his point, it was somewhat fair because I was stressed about the X-ray machine.
Yeah.
There was a part of my mind that's trying to figure out how to like fix this, and like, oh no, is it still under warranty, and yada yada. But there is that piece of that high stress adrenaline or those responses we don't realize when they're chronic, and it can
Mm.
also really affect the retention in relationships.
Mm. Yeah. And that brings up, in my thoughts, the idea of, and I feel like I've done a good job with this, but hiring people to help you with the things you're not good at, right? Like, because people don't realize how many hats you have to wear, and we
Yeah.
we can only do so many things. Like, people can't do the healing work, I got to do the healing work. People can't do the chiropractic work, I got to do the chiropractic work.
Yeah.
And beyond that, people can be trained and capable of doing many other things in the office. And I remember, when I first opened my practice, not this one, when I practiced as an independent contractor in Georgia, I wasn't really looking to build like a practice, because I knew I was going to leave it. But I was looking to build a practice, but I didn't know what that meant fully. And I didn't hire people to do anything, and I did everything. And I found myself like not liking a lot of what I was doing, because it wasn't my skill set. It wasn't where I shined or where I was good. And that's been a big thing along the way. Like, more and more, I've outsourced as much as I can, in my practice along the way. But you have to know how to do it. before you kind of outsource it. But there's plenty of people that can do many things a lot better, a lot
Yeah,
better. And I feel like
absolutely.
I've always been pretty good at doing that over time.
Yeah, you definitely need those relationships of where you can lean on. Uh, to kind of switch gears a little bit, one thing that I would like to go into is basically like profitability in business too, in
Mm,
relation to this conversation. Because, like, for example, one thing that has been a huge help to me is my accountant. Like, my accountant's a great friend of mine. I've been great friends with him and his family for like 13 years or so.
mm,
But like, one of the things that I didn't understand at the beginning was taxes and payroll and deductions and all this stuff that goes along with the business.
mhm,
And so one of the things that we really want to do with business to have it be long-term viable, to have the practitioner be there for a long time, it needs to be profitable. That
mhm,
you can't be losing money running the business.
mhm,
And one of the things that helped me as far as taxes, was this field that I just didn't understand. The thing that worked for me was basically taking extra payroll tax, basically paying my taxes, estimated tax burden every pay period.
mm.
So, like, because I'm on payroll for my office, and I just pay extra, every pay period, which goes towards my taxes. And since then, I haven't had a big tax bill at the end of the year. And
Yeah.
before I did that, I started getting these like big tax bills that I was basically unprepared for, because just through a lack of understanding and planning.
Yeah, that never feels good. Yeah, so that's like 101. Like, and I'm agree 100% with you. I had a bookkeeper when I got started. Um, I don't do a lot of insurance, but I had a people that did verification, so we at least could like let people know the benefits they had. And I remember having all these little things that just kind of took away, some of those little stressors. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
super important. And I mean, people, it's very generic. People will always be like, get yourself a good lawyer, a good accountant, all this stuff. And I think when I first got into business, before I had this practice and I was just a
yeah,
chiropractor that was licensed, I didn't care about those things. And then you start doing well and you start doing better. It's like you want to take care of those things because nobody likes getting hit with a huge tax bill. Like, I don't care how much or how little, like, it doesn't feel good, We're not conditioned to be like, here's a really 5-digit tax bill. Like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and especially, it's basically you're like you're wearing all these different hats. You're head down, and you're
Mhm.
working your butt off with the business and with patient care and trying to take care of yourself and do all those things.
Yeah.
And for me, that was an area where I was consistently falling short. Was basically that, like, understanding taxes and the tax planning,
Yeah.
and that was my workaround there. But it's actually really common for business owners. Like,
Mm.
that's a huge issue that affects many business owners.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, oh gosh, there's like retirement planning, but like that was something I kind of went at pretty early on, and I think that's really important. You do that for a long period of time, you really do start to see growth and how it works and how you're putting things away. And I've always seen the value. Well, I guess you could say I saw a lot of the value in putting money away because when I was a teacher for 3
Mm.
years, and I was teacher in Pennsylvania. So you acquired retirement through the state system, and I put money into a 403b. And when I left teaching, I had accumulated 3 years worth of contributions. And I don't remember exactly how that much that was, but that money that I saved up over the course of me being in chiropractic school grew, that I took that money out to start my practice. So teaching and retirement planning were actually, I did take a hit because I took money out super early, but it
Yeah,
was invested into something that has returned down the line, So I look at that planning, and I feel like when you are young, if you put a little bit away, it makes a bigger difference. And also reinvesting in the practice, right? Early on, it's like my office doesn't look the way it looked 10 years ago. I don't look the way I looked. My staff doesn't. My systems don't. Everything should grow. And I've never been shy to put money back into the business. And I think that speaks volumes. And when people do that, that's really good for retention, right? Because that means you're actually putting in, it shows that you care, in the experience and the building and everything that makes up caring
Yeah.
for people, it matters. And people see that, like the experience over time is what keeps people there, not like your wildly great adjustment compared to another chiropractor. It's the relationship, and it's the details of this matters, your experience. And then people feel that, they really do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That, Disneyland type experience, or that Disney World type experience.
Mhm.
But one thing I will say though with that is something that I've been working on lately is I realized that over the years how kind of bloated the practice became in certain
Mhm.
areas. So recently, like we switched softwares after 13 years, but one of the primary reasons I did it was because the software we were using was kind of clunky. I didn't love it, but it would have just been such a monster to change that I didn't, I was avoiding it,
I did the
and
same
I
thing.
didn't know what to change it to. Uh, and then also, I realized that we had basically four softwares doing the work of one software. And
Mhm.
between all these other softwares, it was close to, it was around like $900 a month or so in just the software expenses to do the work of the main thing. And I'm switching to another software company, or we already did. And I get to cut out all these extra pieces that over the years, it was just like they got added
Mhm.
on. They kind of
Yeah.
these subscriptions and different things. And with the business, like if you look at your personal finances, like if everybody looks at their personal finances, they really like go through like each line. You'll probably realize there's all sorts of like money that you're spending on things that maybe you don't need. Maybe
Mhm.
it's like Netflix and you have to watch Netflix or whatever. Maybe there are
Yeah.
these other pieces of it. But with a business, it's like almost times 100, because it's like just the volume that you're dealing with is so much. There's so many transactions happening per day, right? Like money
Yeah.
coming in and money going out. So it can be really easy for things to just like thinking you need things that you don't. Maybe you did need things at one time and then you don't need them anymore.
Mhm.
Or like I started going through everything. It was like, we'd have different subscriptions. Like I had the subscription to Microsoft Office, and the front desk had a different subscription.
Oh, yeah.
Or like
Yeah.
these things like that, where it's like, okay, like it sounds like a little thing, but then when you actually like tally it up, it was mega. It was a lot,
Yeah.
and it was just something that in the business, you really need to be able to look at profitability for the practitioners.
Mhm.
So it's like it takes a huge amount of work to do the healing work, like a huge amount of energy to get up and see a bunch of patients and do the healing work. So you want to make sure that the profit margins are appropriate.
Mm.
And like if you're wasting money by spending it on these different things that you don't need, it's a great way to have like a burnout and stress, because the overhead becomes really high.
Mhm.
There's kind of a pressure that you need to make a certain amount of much money just for the overhead.
Yeah. And I mean, that's not a great place to practice from. And I mean, I'm sure we've all been there. Like when you do, like you said, reinvest in the practice, sometimes you're like doing it and you're like, what am I even spending money on? Like because you're right, there are a lot of transactions, there's little things, everything seems important, right?
Yeah.
You can always justify like making this better, but also knowing what are the biggest ways that kind of generate good clients. That's always a good question, like a good leading question. Like, where are your best clients coming from? How did they find you? What are they staying for? Why are they interested in you? And I remember early in my practice, I would do a lot of surveying of like understanding
Mhm.
my clients and what they were into and what they enjoyed and what they enjoyed about the experience, and what we could do better. I wasn't really afraid to ask them questions early on to get
Yeah.
feedback, to kind of cater to my favorite people. And I didn't do that for everyone. I did that for the people that I liked working with best. So I
Yeah.
could gear more of the experience to them, because the 80/20 principle applies so much throughout practice, meaning like 20% of your people bring 80% of the business. Like there's some definite truth to that, and 20% of your efforts bring in 80% of the practice. Or we realize that with the healing work, right? Some people just come for a session, some people come for a session quite often, some people want to run on the path. It's not all are equal in their commitment and desire to kind of move in the same way. So understanding where the people that you love working with, where they're coming from, why they're into it, and who do you like to even work with? And at the beginning, you don't know. You're just kind of letting everybody in.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's a huge key, I think, as far as like understanding like where we're putting the energy, because you want it to be with the people where it's going to kind of grow in
Yeah.
terms of they're going to be able to like do good things, especially with the healing work.
Yeah.
Chiropractic is just not quite the same level of energy goes into it. I think not
Yeah.
on a like one-to-one session basis.
No.
Yeah, with the energy healing work, it's giving it to somebody who's gonna like grow with it, and there can be a huge
Mhm.
amount of support that goes on the back end too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found when, a big difference between the healing work versus the chiropractic work is the healing work responds much quicker to my focus in a
Mm.
positive way or in a less productive way, you can say. Like if I'm just taking small little steps towards growth and um people don't just stumble into it as easily, you know, like, oh, I needed a chiropractor. So I looked for the chiropractor I found. It's like there's an attunement to it's more important for me to open my mouth about the healing work
Right.
to consistently to help people find that. And it isn't to everyone, but I have noticed when I'm more open and or I set the intention, like I'm going to look for um new opportunities to help people meditate more, to receive energetic work, to begin to know themselves. Like that starts with me kind of focusing on it and then it works. But if I just like sit back and let it happen, it never works. It's like
Mm.
that never just kind of like falls into my lap. In the same way. I mean, sometimes things do, but I have to be like taking steps in the right direction for them to happen. So I noticed the growth in that work is not nearly as consistent as the chiropractic marketing, if you will.
Yeah, it's really funny. They kind of are two totally different, separate worlds.
Yeah.
And if you're out of alignment, it's so hard, almost impossible to do that energetic work.
Yeah.
Uh, and when we say out of alignment, it's basically like being in alignment with your higher self. With chiropractic, like you can do the chiropractic work, being out of alignment with your higher self. People
Yeah.
do that all the time.
Hmm.
But with energetic work, it just doesn't quite flow. People will cancel, or they won't show up, or
Yeah.
the phone won't ring. Those things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more delicate. It's held in a different way, and
Yeah.
I've tried to almost meld them at certain times, but they kind of do well on their own. There's
Yeah.
many people in the chiropractic. This is another long term thing. I'm always looking for new ways to just help create awareness. It's not about like, oh, all my chiropractic clients should do this. It's about there is this awareness that I do this work and I do it in these ways, and there's opportunities for you to find it. So there's a consistent not evolution, but a consistent purposeful nature in allowing the right people to find me to work with in a new way. And that brings me a lot of joy because I enjoy both
Right.
aspects of the healing that we do. And
Right.
this is like the third pillar, business. I really enjoy business as well. I
Yeah.
just like entrepreneurship and the fact that like I don't live in this box as far as my life and how I want to develop my schedule and the people that I take care of. So, it is kind of it's liberating in many ways. There's a freedom in business that I think attracts many people. But it's a constant evolving process that requires discipline, consistency, and holding that like short term vision and also this like long term awareness all at the same time.
Yeah, that's really well said. There's a lot of different pieces to juggle.
Yeah. So this was a fun topic to really explore. And I think even in here, there's a couple little pieces that jumped out that I feel like could be standalone episodes as well as we go.
Yeah, yeah, it's something that I think a lot of people can relate to who are practitioners, as well as the energy healing work too. Because we came to the energy healing work from this background of having run a business for a while.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of people, they come to the energetic healing work because they love it, but they may have no experience of ever running a business.
Totally.
and
Totally.
especially a business where you're, taking care of clients. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot to be aware of, and it is something where it's a dance. But I think to kind of summarize this episode, we need to really make sure that you're taking care of yourself. The self care is there, because if you're burnt out, you're just not going to be effective as a practitioner.
Yeah.
So to do that, you need to have a schedule that supports it. There'll likely be some compromise because maybe the clients get out at a certain time of work. Like ideally, like my schedule would probably be like 10 to 4, right?
Mhm.
But that's just not it's just not feasible for where I live and where people work and where they commute and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, at least not during the chiropractic days. So there's probably going to have to be a bit of a dance as far as a compromise there, but have a schedule that supports you and look at it from the long term.
Mm.
So that self-care, okay, can I do this long term? And then from the business piece, like try to keep the overhead low at the beginning and then go
Yeah.
up as the profits there, because it's so easy for people to spend too much money at the beginning, or things that they don't just necessarily need. Like I was talking to an energy healing practitioner who got an LLC at the beginning, which is really just something that you probably don't need. You don't need to
Yeah.
incorporate at the very beginning, right? Like there's a certain level where you do need that, but it's these little things that can add up to quite a bit. Like it's really easy to go overboard where when you're getting into business. So just start slow, or start where you can like have effective profit margins. It's sustainable in terms of self care, and then you keep going up.
I love it. I mean, I think that's honestly a great just kind of starter package to like get into. Start small, grow, reinvest, but don't go over the top. And the self-care piece, man. I mean, that's in it for the longevity. It's like most people don't work out for the next 10 years, right? They're working out too much in the short term, where it's like if you really just said, "Hey, I need a lifestyle that's going to support me and my growth,"
Yeah,
you approach it slightly differently. And I think that's a good way to start business is like, well, I want to be in practice for a while. I want to work with people for a while. So that's going to require me to care for myself.
right.
And that really is caring for the business, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Because it's like the business can't function without you. And both you and I, we own our own businesses, and we've
Yeah.
had probably lots of different people help us over the years in terms of working with us.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like if we can't function, then the business doesn't exist
Yeah.
anymore.
So it's like this episode's really about self-care sustains is priority for sustaining a business for the long run.
Yeah, yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining again. I think we could even on another episode in the future talk about some of the success principles that we've discovered in really the energy healing work, because I think that profession needs the most help as far as like, running a business. But I think we're getting there in this episode, but I think we can expand upon it down the line. So thanks for exploring with us. Always a pleasure. And we look forward. We're going to have some interviews coming up in the next couple episodes again, too. We had a little bit of a hiatus, but we're ready to bring some new people and some new life to the podcast.
yeah. Thank you all so much for joining us. We have some exciting stuff coming up.